Hi, I'm Mario Arias with Utmost Performance Coaching. So for this video, I'll give you a second to go and grab yourself something to eat. That's a joke, and you'll see why here in a second. What I want to talk to you guys about today is nutrition. And I will preface this video by saying the following. What you're going to hear from me may surprise you, but I want to be fully transparent in this video, and I want to let you know that this is my stance and how I view nutrition as you would take it on the bike during your training and your racing. So I want to start off by talking about a couple of different things that I feel you would need to know in order to make your decision on how you're going to approach your nutrition in your training, in your racing. But before I do that, I just want to make sure, and I want to be very clear, that although I am going to express to you my philosophy, my thoughts, how I do my nutrition personally, and how I feel maybe that you should investigate doing it, I want to make sure that you're aware that everybody is different, and you need to just really try different things, experiment with different things, different strategies, different products, and really find out what works for you. It's no secret that there are a ton of different ways of going about nutrition with gels and drinks and mixes, and there's a bunch of different products out there. And then at the same time that you're watching this video with me talking about nutrition, all you've got to do is continue to scroll through your YouTube feed, and you're going to find somebody else that's going to have a completely different approach to nutrition. So I'm not saying that I am correct. I am not saying that this is the way that you absolutely need to do it. But what I want to establish during this video is, are you open to potentially applying some of the things that I am going to lay in front of you here? So nutrition with training and with racing. Let's start here though. We know that what generally tends to separate elite athletes from, say, more amateur athletes is the rate at which these elite athletes are able to metabolize fat. Nice way of saying that is, elite athletes, what we've seen when they're measured in a lab and in studies is they're able to use fat as a fuel source more efficiently and effectively than lower level athletes. And here's simply what that means. These athletes are able to tap into their fat stores, and they're able to use that to continue to allow them to meet the energy demands that are placed upon them. I'll just kind of go off on a brief little tangent here, and if you haven't seen it, there was a video that came out with probably the best cyclist right now that's out, a guy named Tadej Pogacar, and it talked about the fact that he can ride just below his first lactate turn point, and he can ride at an incredibly high wattage, and everybody was like, wow, that's amazing, and everybody just looked at the number. But let me kind of dive down a little bit deeper, and let me explain to you what that means. What it means is that he's able to ride at that intensity using predominantly, please hang on to that word, predominantly fat as a fuel source. Now, let's put that down. Let me make that point number one. We're talking about fat metabolism here, and we're talking about what separates those higher performing athletes from maybe the lower performing athletes. Fat metabolism. But notice that I said predominantly using fat for energy. Now, why did I say that? Because another misconception with nutrition is most folks think you're either burning fat and then at some point you completely transition over to burning carbohydrate. And so it's this kind of line that is drawn in the sand, and we go from fat burning to carbohydrate, like lactate turn point 1, like I mentioned in the video. Once you cross over that, then you're going carbohydrate 100% of the time. But before that, you were fat utilization 100% of the time. Folks, that is absolutely not true. You are continuously, as you pedal your bike, training or racing, you are using some combination of, so 100% utilization, and it's some combination of that 100 of fat and carbohydrate. Maybe it's a 60-40 fat to carbohydrate if it's a little higher intensity. Maybe it's a 70-30 split if it's a little bit lower intensity. Really don't know exactly what it is, but we know that you're using both of those fuel sources, fat and carbohydrate, always, all the time. So I just kind of want to make sure that we make that point number 2. You're always using both of these fuel sources. So now let's jump back into how this plays itself out. So if we're wanting to bring up and raise that level, raise that wattage or speed or intensity or whatever you want to call it, at which you're able to utilize fat as your predominant energy source, then we have to train that. And point number 3 that I want to make is carbohydrate. We know it as, a lot of times, if you're looking at gels, if you're looking at drink mixes, they taste very sweet. Why? Because they are a simple sugar of some sort. And so we know that for the most part, these carbohydrate products that we are taking in, they're predominantly sugar, which it's not a bad thing, okay? But what it is, it's a quick energy source. Your body is able to break that down very quickly, and it's able to use it quickly as an energy source. Your body likes that. Our bodies are actually, they're bent on the survival of the organism. They're bent on, our body's number one job is to keep us alive. It's to keep us on this planet. It's to keep us breathing and able to meet whatever energy demands that we are putting on it. So therefore, if we give the body a choice between utilizing fat for an energy source or utilizing carbohydrate for an energy source, your body is going to default to carbohydrate. Now, why would it do that? Because it's easier for the body to break that down versus the breaking down of fat as a fuel source. It takes longer for this fuel source, for the fat to be broken down, and your body would rather just go ahead and get it over and get it done with. It's a survival mechanism. And so it's going to default to carbohydrate. Now, truth be told, we actually, if we were to break both of those energy substrates down, we actually get more energy from fat than we do from carbohydrate. However, the breakdown of that fat comes at a higher cost in terms of the efficiency and the processing that needs to be done to get to extract that energy from that fat. And so it's important to understand that, because now I'm going to kind of start diving into a nutrition strategy and what I feel is most beneficial and would be better for you maybe to investigate again as the way that you should go about your nutrition. If we want to raise that level of fat metabolism, that intensity, that power, that speed, whatever you want to call it, then what we have to do is we have to essentially begin to train and, in a sense, almost force feed the body to go to that energy source. Now, remember, if we put both carbohydrate and fat on the table and we say, body, choose, body's going to choose carbohydrate. And so what we can do is we can begin to force the body to use the fat. How would we do that? Well, the answer is don't give it access to the carbohydrate source, and therefore make it defer to using the fat source for energy. Now, you can't do that. You can't starve the body of it completely, because you do have blood glucose, and glucose is sugar. It's a carbohydrate. And then you also have liver glycogen, and glycogen is also carbohydrate. So your body will go to those sources. They're already inside of you. There's no way you can get rid of those. Your body stores those. They're always readily available within the body, okay? What I'm talking about here, and here's where the rubber meets the road and where this video may get a little controversial, what I'm talking about is exogenous carbohydrate ingestion. In other words, going to gels, going to blocks, little chews, going to drink mixes, those kinds of things. That exogenous taking in of carbohydrate. That's what I'm talking about. And we can control that. We can make the conscious decision to not take in as much of that. So here we go. Buckle up. I hope you're sitting down. We're talking about, yes, the science that's out there, or the stories that are out there are talking about 90 to 120 grams of carbohydrate. That kind of seems to be the standard. Some folks are talking about pushing 150. I've seen a triathlete, can't remember his name, that was pushing 200 during his competition. And all of these records are being broken and they're able to do these amazing things. But kind of take a second and think about this. Given the information that I've given you, that we know is true, does it make sense to be taking in all of this exogenous carbohydrate if what we're trying to do is elevate this fat metabolism that we know is what these athletes are able to use as an energy source way longer than a lower level performing athlete? You see, that's how these things play themselves out. If you have two athletes that are competing against each other, and you have an athlete that is able to run off of more of a percentage of fat and not tap into that quick energy source of carbohydrate, blood glucose, liver glycogen, and they're going up against an athlete that, say, has to do that earlier, so they're starting to get into that blood glucose and liver glycogen. They're both able to keep up maybe with each other until all of a sudden that one athlete that's been having to use carbohydrate for a longer period of time, they begin to lack that energy. And I know that a lot of you would say, well, then the argument is, Mario, that's why we're taking in the 90 to 120 grams of carbohydrate. And so it makes up for it. And so that athlete's going to continue to get that. But at some point, that example or that rationale or that reasoning, at some point, it runs its course and it runs out. Because what are you going to continue to do? Are you going to continue to pump exogenous carbohydrate in? Well, if this person over here is getting away with 60 grams an hour because their fat metabolism is better and it's higher, it's more efficient, and this person over here is having to do 90 to 120 to 150, then folks, I'll let you do the math. Where are we going to end up on this journey of 90, 120, 150? Now we're at 200. How many grams of carbohydrate are we going to end up at? And this is not talking about what some of the health implications of taking all of that carbohydrate ingestion exogenously may lead us to. And so, yes, I am going to say, hold on a second. I am going to, again, think about this. Give it a chance. Have an open mind. I am going to pump the brakes a little bit and say, should we be considering a lower exogenous carbohydrate ingestion? Is it possible to perform at a high level on something as low as maybe 60 grams of carbohydrate versus 90 grams versus 100 grams versus 120 grams of carbohydrate? I do believe that it's possible, but similar to those folks, and you may be one of them, that are training the gut to be able to take in all this exogenous carbohydrate, it's a similar process where we also need to be intentional about training this fat metabolism to be able to metabolize fat at a higher intensity, higher speed, higher power output, whatever it happens to be. And it has to be intentional, and you have to put work into it. And so you have to be thinking about how can I do that? Here's the last thing that I want to say that you can kind of put in your back pocket and just be thinking about if you are willing to give this a try. There's insulin sensitivity, and there's a reaction that would come from sugar, from simple sugar. And I'm going to go all the way back to the example that I like to give is a child on their first birthday. One of the traditions that many of us have for our children, and I did this with our kiddos, was on their first birthday, they've never had sugar, right? They've been breastfeeding or whatever it is, however it is they're getting their food. And then on their first birthday, everybody comes around, you celebrate, and you give them a cake. Here we go. They've got a cake in front of them, and it's cute, and we're singing. And then we see what the baby's gonna do. Let the baby kind of put their hands in the cake and see it. And then sometimes we put the cake up to their mouth because they're like, what is this thing? And then that baby gets the taste of sugar. There's frosting in that cake. There's some sugar in that cake, more than they've ever ingested before that period. And a lot of times what we see is, boy, that baby, eyes get wide open. That baby all of a sudden has this rush of, oh my goodness, and then they just begin to pound on that cake. They're eating it, and they're just in love with, what is this thing that I just ate? Well, baby, it's this thing called sugar. It's simple sugar, right? And you love it, and it gives you energy. And so the last thing that I want to talk about is, if you choose to do this, be paying attention, be self-aware to see if you can raise this fat metabolism, and if you can decrease maybe your level of exogenous carbohydrate that when you are taking in, then will you potentially experience this baby's first birthday taking in sugar, and now all of a sudden that 60 grams of carbohydrate, that gel that you take in, all of a sudden, does it provide you with an energy boost that you weren't getting when you were ingesting gels, because you were taking in so many of them that your body just got used to the ingestion of exogenous carbohydrate, and that sugar level just didn't really pop for you. It didn't really give you that boost. Again, to fast forward to those of us into adulthood, or you've got kids or whatever, if you're continuously ingesting sugar yourself, and this is not even on the bike, this is just a real life example. You like candy, you like sweets, or your kids do or whatever, have you noticed that your tolerance for that goes up? Have you noticed that all of a sudden that sugar that you had, it was one piece of candy after dinner, now it's become 2 or 3, or it was that small bit of ice cream and all of a sudden it's a little bit more ice cream? Pause. What's happening there? Well, your body is saying, I like the exogenous sugar that you're giving me, but it's kind of not doing it for me anymore. Can you give me a little bit more, please? And what you're finding is maybe that you're not getting that hit of that sugar. It's not giving you that spike and that boost like you wanted it to. And so, could there be room for less exogenous carbohydrate ingestion, getting back on the bike now, of gels, drink mixes, blocks, things of that nature? Could we kind of bring that down a little bit? Could we get that fat metabolism moving more towards that, lactate term point 1, moving that up? I don't think we'll ever get to Todd Egg's 320 watts or whatever it was, but can we move that up? And then all of a sudden we're training, we're racing, and we know when you pull that gel out of your back pocket and you take it and you give yourself a quick 30 grams of carbohydrate, it's like a turbo. It's like, boom, I'm about to, baby's first birthday, get a piece of that cake. And now we're able to do some things maybe, and that intensity can go up. And we do get that simple sugar pathway. Because, very last point, I'm sorry to keep going long here, but this is really the last point. I don't want you guys to get the misconception that I am anti-carbohydrate. I am not that at all. If you don't ingest some carbohydrate when you're training and when you're racing, training, by the way, depending on the training session that you're doing, okay? But if you're looking to do some intensity, if you're looking to do something maybe threshold and above, you better ingest some carbohydrate, or you will not be able to do what you're trying to do. Your performance will suffer immensely. So I don't want you guys to think, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I am not anti-carbohydrate at all. I take gels with me. I take sugar with me. I do. You have to have it. So I'm not anti-carbohydrate, but what I am asking you to do is I am putting the question before you, is it time to revisit your nutrition strategy, and is it potentially time for you to think about bringing that down a little bit? And if you're watching this video as it comes out, then I don't think there's a better time to try this out, because For some of you guys, if you're road cyclists, it's off season and you maybe don't have anything going on right now. There's not really a huge penalty to trying it out, and maybe it doesn't work. Maybe you tried at 60 and maybe that's not enough right now. Maybe you need a little bit more. Okay, so you had a bad training ride or a bad training session, but it's okay because maybe you don't have some racing coming up. If you're in the middle of mountain bike season or you're getting ready for cyclocross, and I would kind of caution a little bit more about trying this strategy, because you don't want to, if you pay good money to pin on a number, then you don't want to like have a performance go by the wayside and not have it be what you want because you're trying out this strategy, on the whim on a race that really means something to you. So kind of be strategic about when you want to try these things out. But there we go. I'm landing the plane. I know that this has been a lot. I know some of you guys are sitting there. Maybe you took notes. Maybe you have some questions. I would love to get into a discussion about this one.